Hello folks, welcome to Linux for Seniors. Today's video I'm going to be talking about LMDE 5 Cinnamon Desktop and Linux Mint Debian Edition. It is very similar to the Cinnamon Desktop for the Ubuntu side, in other words Linux Mint 21.1 for instance. So I will be going over this fairly fast, but more importantly I'm not going to skip over everything. None of my videos on my new YouTube site, my previous site I used to have over 450 videos, but my new YouTube site, Linux for Seniors, I'm going to slow down a little bit, take some time, explain things. If you're looking for information in that kind of manner, whether you are a senior or young at heart or any Linux enthusiast that just needs an explanation of how things work, stay tuned. I will have some tips also as I move forward, as I do with all of my videos. None of my videos on my current YouTube site, and this is my second project in 4 years. My previous one I did 456 videos if I recall. Most of my videos will be over 2 minutes. I highly suggest you subscribe. That way you can start watching this video today, stop it, come back tomorrow, the next day, whenever you have time to finish the remainder if you're wanting to see the whole video in its entirety, because I will be showing some tips you may not find somewhere else. So I'm going to first open up Terminal and give you quick system information using not that command but neofetch. So this is the Debian logo, kind of done with characters. So this is LMDE 5, Linux Mint Debian Edition of the Cinnamon Desktop. And I'm going to close this box. Where do I begin? Well, I could begin with the calendar, or I could begin with the battery information for my wireless keyboard and mouse. Most of this kind of stuff is self-explanatory from one Cinnamon Desktop to another, but I'm just going to click on it really anyways. So here's the updater. Really, one of the major differences between the updater with Linux Mint 21.1 is there's no kernel history in here, for instance. I just wanted to point that out. This is something you want to see. This icon lights up with a little colored or a dot on it if there's an update, so just be aware of that. And when you got your installed version, that's Bluetooth. I have something called I have something called Variety. Simple screen recorders were next to it, so I misspoke there for a second. What is Variety? It's an automatic wallpaper changer, and you can download that either through Terminal or you can use your software manager. It's an automatic wallpaper changer. It's actually wonderful. I just have the Linux Mint logo loaded in from the Change Desktop settings, okay? So I have some extra folders in addition to the regular ones. Let's put it that way. All right, so that is Simple Screen Recorder, and basically I'm using that to record this video. That's just a favorites. So if you mark something a favorite, it becomes your favorite. There's also a favorites in the menu in here also. And what that is a applet that basically if I depress the caps lock key, you'll see it light up. Most of the time these kind of post-it notes go away after a couple seconds, but this remains on the screen. This is done with an applet. And that's the name of the applet. You can get it from downloads. All right, with that said, I'm going to turn my caps lock off so I can see that. You know, there's nothing worse than trying to log into some website with that on. And anyways, it gets embarrassing. So walking across these icons, I have lots of icons down there. Some of them are non-standard. So that's Terminal. I have Google Chrome installed, Opera installed, Firefox, and Brave web browsers. This is a game. It's actually a launcher. I created a launcher, which is basically done, well, it's a little bit more complex to explain, but a launcher just is if you got a program that didn't get downloaded through the software manager or installed through like one of the other package managers and or Terminal, you can bring it in as a folder and create a launcher for it. It's very simple to use, but I'm really not going to get into it today. That's what that is. It's just a simple game. IMDb, maybe you're familiar with that. That is a website to look up like movie trivia. This is done using web apps. All of these icons were used with web apps. What is web apps? It's a utility that was created by the Linux Mint team. Okay, this is this version. So this is also available in all of the other Linux Mint versions of Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE desktops. And if you're curious about what I call him, Mr. Linux Mint, Clem, very intelligent man. Call him Mr. Linux Mint. Anyways, there's a README file regarding this thing. In general, though, I am going to be, I just released or will be releasing a video on how to do this. So I'm really not going to spend time on that. But you can actually make web links without any coding skills. And it can even go to your home router if you like. This one goes to my home router. These goes to websites. Anything that you can click on to a web browser, you can usually make an icon out of it. Go check my video out on the Linux Mint 21.1 Cinnamon web apps. Alright, so that's what these are, and there's my home router. That comes in handy if I needed to update the firmware, turn it on and off the guest network, that kind of thing. So the file manager for this distribution is Nemo, just like the one for the Cinnamon desktop for Linux Mint 21.1. Now I will just show you a couple of the shortcuts. Maybe you have seen that video, maybe you have not. So I'm going to show you some undocumented things in here also. And more importantly, if you wanted to resize these icons, doing it the old-fashioned way, you can drag that back and forth. You can also click the zoom in and out in normal size. And if you're wondering about that mouse pointer, no, this is not standard, and I do have a dedicated video on how to put this in. But I'll tell you where the folder is in a minute. So basically, I'm going to resize these icons my way. I have a little shortcut for you. I am right-handed, so I'm holding my computer mouse with my right hand, and most modern computer mice have scroll wheels on them. My left hand is near my keyboard next to the control key. I'm going to depress and hold it. While scrolling on my computer mouse up and down, I can resize these icons on the fly. This comes in handy for a lot of reasons. I'm going to release the control key, and these things will remain in this size. If I click the download and go the other way and switch between the two, you can see it holds the setting in between the folders. I'm going to resize this back up. It's like magically moving that. You can see that little red bar moving. So I think you'll find that a lot easier to actually resize icons. The other benefit is I got a lot of wallpaper and pictures in here, so I'm just going to click wallpaper for a second. I currently left that in dinky is what I call it. I can even make it tinier. Okay, and I can also scroll up. And then once I release the control key, these thumbnails will remain in this size. I have some weird wallpapers, folks. And you can make anything a wallpaper. So if you got digital pictures of your children or your friends or pets, you can set it as wallpaper. Really simple to do. Done. All right, so I'm going to resize the icons back a little bit smaller. And once I release the control key, you can either grab a hold of this if you like, or just scroll up and down with your mouse in the new resized. The other thing is if you have the behavior of your, I'm not talking your behavior, but the behavior of your file manager set for double click on items. What's an item? A file or a folder. Then you can perform actions like this. I'm hitting the space bar. So I'm getting a preview, and then I can blow this completely up, and then I'll hit the space bar to close it. This is called a previewer. So basically I can take any photo, any image, and hit the space bar to do this with. You can also double click, but it opens this up with XViewer. In XViewer you can do some other things, like you can do a slideshow. When I'm in XViewer, if I hit the space bar, it goes to the next photo, and so forth and so on. So these are some of the hidden gems that you may want to think about. Okay, so we can look at the file manager in lots of different display modes. Okay, I'm going to go up one and basically, actually what I'm going to do is go to the home folder. I'm going to resize these. What's a comfortable size for you? And I'm pretty sure these are too tiny. You know, if I go back to that folder, by the way, and I'll make these tiny, I'm going to show you a nifty little trick. Even in this size, you probably can't tell I'm clicking on that mushroom, but if I hit the space bar, there's the mushroom. I'm going to hit the space bar to close. I'll pick another photo randomly. You get the idea? All right, let's go move that back up. Just a little having fun, folks. So let me resize those back to normal, or you can use the drag bar if you feel more comfortable. Okay, so where's this mouse pointer stored? Actually, I'm going to hit Control H. That shows hidden files. It's actually stored in this .icons folder. It's this mouse pointer right here. On my video, I explained pretty much in detail how to put this thing in here. You can usually put mouse pointers in here within 30 seconds after you download the file. So I'm going to hit Control H to go back to normal size. I have other devices also and a trash can. Other devices are internal hard drives. I don't have a USB stick currently in there, so it's not represented, but it would populate in here also. So these are just your home folders and personal folders and trash can. I'm going to empty mine. I have a lot of junk in mine. And anytime you dump a file, let's say you wanted to delete something, I'll just click on this and hit delete. It's in the trash can. Changed my mind. Just click on it and do restore selected, or right click and do a restore. It's that simple. So that's the file manager, thru in a nutshell. I do recommend that you activate this icon though. Here I showed it on my other video for Nemo the file manager, and that's show thumbnails. I'll show you why. So I'm going to go to pictures for a second, use the same thing with the wallpaper. I'm going to turn this off on purpose. If you ever see this, that means somebody accidentally went in here and more likely click that. There's no keyboard equivalent to turn it back on. You have to click it in here. However, if you have this icon already placed here, you can do this. So do yourself a favor. The first thing you want to do more likely when you install this is to go to the toolbar and activate that. You can activate all these tools. There's plenty of room on this toolbar. Let me show you this in full mode. Let me show you another trick. I'm going to double click on this imaginary bar to make this bigger. You can now see there's plenty of room here, even if I toggle the address bar. These are the tools I'm speaking of. Now I'm going to close that. So let's walk to the, well actually let me make this dark. So let's switch to that and walk through the menu really quick. So these are your favorites. You can make anything a favorite, and some of my icons are custom, just to forewarn you. Okay, so you have your software manager, and it's been a while since I opened this. So I will let this thing generate. You also have another way of installing software. It's called Synaptic Package Manager. I'll open that up in a second. And the third way is using Terminal. This software manager is very intuitive and very helpful. It's called Mint Install. It's basically point and click. If you need to, I'll click a category. If you find a check mark next to a box, that means it's installed. There's a remove key right here. So something that's not installed is HTOP, for instance. It has a green button. By the way, top is installed by default. Let me activate top. Some of you folks that, well, are seniors may remember the movie Topper. It's about a guy that has a ghost, but it's a comedy. You can look that up on IMDb to get the idea. If you want to think about this mnemonic, just put in top. That is built into just about any Linux distribution for terminal. That's a process monitor. This is a fancy one of those. I'm going to close the terminal box. So if I was looking through Office suites, you can see that LibreOffice Writer is installed. You could launch it in here. Most people launch it actually from the menu in here. Here's LibreOffice Writer for you. Very similar to Microsoft Word, except it's free. So you can see there's a lot of software packages. The software manager also contains Flatpak software. Flatpak software is self-contained software, and it's usually larger in download size. Okay, so I will just put that up. And this has two versions of GIMP. GIMP is like Photoshop. There's the FlatHub version, which is a huge download. Again, this is all self-contained software. It comes from flathub.org. I will show you where the other software comes from in a second. And this is the standard package, 33 megabytes, coming from the Linux Mint world. A lot of the screenshots are in foreign languages, so don't worry about that. It just depends on what kind of language packs that you have in your machine for your language. So if it's English and you download this program or application, then in when you open the program up, it will be in English. All right, so there's lots of software is what I'm getting at. So you can use Terminal also to install software. I'm not sure what's in my history buffer, but I'll bring that up for a second. Let me find an install command in here. I don't have any install commands in here. That's too bad. But there's lots of little things you can do. There's some, oh yeah, there's an install command right here. So it's a typical install command. So the name of the application is Brave Browser. If you're going to install anything from Terminal, you need to know the actual name of the package. It doesn't pull it off the internet. I'll show you where the repositories are right now while I remember this. Actually, I can right click and hit System Settings and scroll to the bottom. And I'm going to have to type this password in for a second. So most of your packages are coming from Mint and also from Debian, because this is LMDE. So if you had the Ubuntu version, this will say Ubuntu on it. So their main packages are from Mint and the other ones are coming from Debian. And then the Flatpak software comes from flathub.org. There is none of that information can be found anywhere. Just trust me on that. You can look that up yourself. You can actually go onto their website, onto flathub.org, and then click these set up systems, and you'll see Linux Mint logo there. That's software sources. All right, so that's basically the install command. Let me break it down for you so it doesn't become that complex. Sudo just means super user do. In other words, it gives me elevated privileges to do something. And then this apt install is the command to perform an install. apt space install. There is also a space between sudo and apt. There's also a space between that install and the Brave browser. So if I perform another sudo command, I can actually copy this portion of it. And then I'll scroll to the bottom and I'll hit paste. And then I'm going to put in, I think I have it installed, but if I do it anyways, it'll either say I have it installed or it will install it. VLC is, it's an application that's a video player. I knew I could say that. Okay, it wasn't installed. So now I'm going to install it. So before I complete this process, I'm going to show you that there's no VLC in here currently. When I get done here, and it'll only take a couple seconds, hopefully. It's downloading and actually now it's done. And more importantly, there's VLC. I installed that through Terminal. You don't have to use Terminal to install software. You can certainly use Software Manager. Now let me open up Synaptic Package Manager. There's the third way of doing things. The reason I'm going to open up this one, I'm just going to show you the number and pieces of software. Okay, they are slightly different from the Linux Mint 21 version, by the way. You can also search for things. You remember I have this thing paused over here, variety. I'm going to do it by name only. And it'll have an install box on it. Here's the legends. So that box means it's installed. All right, that's not the reason I brought you in here. I wanted to go to all sections and let you see that number down here, the one I'm circling with the mouse. So 60,000 packages are listed in here, 22 2,000 plus are installed. So you got lots of software to pick from. If you were to pick out something, it all depends on how many packages that it uses, but you could mark it for installation. If it requires other software, you can mark that to make it work properly. Some of these may require only one thing, like that one requires only one, and then you would just hit apply. That's if you wanted to use Synaptic. I'm going to unmark that. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. I just wanted to let you see that number. So that's 3 ways of installing software. Most people pick the point and click software manager. All right, let's take a look at some of these applications. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Most of these applications are identical, if not similar, to the one in the Linux Mint 21 version of the Cinnamon desktop. You have your standard image writer and formatter. Image writer is used to take Linux images, and it's a very simple tool. It's called ISOs. You can also burn those onto DVDs or CDs, depending on the size. These would be like a Linux image, and you've got a USB stick, you just hit write. The verify button is something new. It's used for verifying the individual distribution if they provide a file, and most of them do. So you can check this to see the copy is valid. That's for security reasons. So lots of little tools, including a screenshot tool. There's my variety automatic wallpaper changer. That does not come installed natively, but you have to install it. Warpinator is a file sharing service. If you turn your firewall on, just be aware that you need to address the rules in here. There's a utility actually in the setup on the last page to fix that in your firewall if you're using the standard firewall. My icon for games is slightly different than yours if you have games installed. So under graphics, you can also install GIMP. It's like Photoshop. So internet, I got lots of things in here. Web browsers and also web app type of icons, as you can see. Not going to dwell much on that because I have a separate video on that for you to watch. The Office is LibreOffice. That comes installed. LibreOffice Writer is like Microsoft Word. Just a quick tip if you're not familiar with this. So I'm going to put in misspelled test. Gets the squigglies. Then you can right click and correct the spelling. You can also save this as a Microsoft document and other formats. ODT is the standard one. I'm going to keep scrolling. There's a Microsoft Office 365, Microsoft Word 97 through 2003 .doc, and lots of other formats. The best price for this Office suite, it's free, just like most open source software. So anyways, where did I leave off? Close this thing. I think I left off at Office. So in addition to the writer, or like your word processor program is what I'm getting at, you have a spreadsheet, a draw program, and a database also in the whole suite. You can click this and get access to all of these things at a submenu. I added VLC, you just saw me do that. I also added Simple Screen Recorder to record this video for you. Rhythm Box is a music box. Hypnotics is an IPTV thing. It's like internet TV. Celluloid is a video player. Lots of things with the admin tools. Very similar to the Linux Mint 21.1. Okay, I think I manually installed boot repair on this one for a demo one time. But normally boot repair doesn't get installed on your normal installed copies, only on the USB sticks. The live media USB sticks. That's a good tool to use, by the way, if you ever have booting problems. So here we are again, Software Manager, Software Sources, Synaptic Package Manager, and of course you can use Terminal. System reports you may find useful too. You get system information, or you're looking for motherboard information, you can find that right here. You can also use this command out of Terminal. It's a strange command, but anyways. inxi is a command. The switch that I'm using here, the dash big FXC, does not show personal information. That's all this is pretty much the same thing as in here. So here's the MOBO, motherboard information. And by the way, if you're looking for motherboard information, if you haven't seen my videos on upgrading RAM and stuff, you need motherboard information most of the time when you're purchasing RAM. This is a great place to do something like this. You can right click and copy this information, open up a web browser and paste that text into the web browser and add the word manual, and you should be able to find the manual for your particular motherboard. You can also get it in here under system reports. Lots of different ways of doing things, folks. I left that. Now Timeshift you should have activated already. So Timeshift is a system restore utility. So mine is active. That's what you want to see, is a green shield. And most of the time your settings will schedule 5 of these things. If you are running out of hard drive space, you may want to reduce that down. Don't go below 2 though, because they do take up space. But the other thing most people don't think about is when their system crashes, most of the time all your personal files are being excluded because it's making copies of your system files. If you include your home folder and files, so I have 2 users here, well, actually 3. I got Bob, T, and Mary here. I could include their files, but keep in mind the backups will be large, and you better have a large hard drive if you activate that. I would personally back up my personal files to a different device other than your booting drive. Then I would just actually take that device, whether it's USB stick or portable hard drive, and put it in a fire safe if the files are important enough to me. But more importantly, I wanted to bring this to your attention that Timeshift does not normally make copies of your personal files if you kept the defaults when you activated Timeshift. Timeshift is a very fast utility. It uses, in most cases, when you were using the wizard, you probably picked rsync. I actually use rsync for other purposes too. I write script files to use rsync to copy folders from one drive to another. That's one purpose of that. BTRFS is another method. But more importantly, what I'm getting at is your files. These backups here are on your hard drive. They're inside of your file system under Timeshift. Your daily backups are sitting here. Let me right click on one of these and let this add up. It's already up to 6 gigabytes. I'll let this continue. It's still not finished, and it's now hitting 8. So add these up times 5. You can see the space consumption. See, I'm already at 9 and it's still not finished. I'm going to close that. So the more of these you have, the more hard drive space you have. Now think about this. If you activated your personal files to go with this, this will be a culmination of not only system files, but all of your personal stuff. All right, so the more of these you have, the more space it eats up. Don't go below 2 though, in case you decided to go the other way with the settings here and reduce this number. And by the way, it doesn't get rid of them right away. So if you reduce that number, let's say to 2 or 3, you could technically delete these now to save you some space and leave the 3. But if you left that alone and you deleted these 2, believe it or not, in 5 or 7 days, you're going to have 5 of these right back because of this setting right here. It's whatever you left it. And if you start clicking monthly, weekly, hourly, and boot, oh boy, it will start consuming an enormous amount of space. Now I'm going to continue. It's just a tip for you folks. All right, so I left off at Timeshift. There's Update Manager here and here. So you can also right-click on this icon to check for your updates. Refresh. Okay, let's continue. I left off with the Update Manager. You can add additional users. There's two types. So let me just do a sample. So I have 3 users. If I add another one, you have 2 choices. Standard users cannot install programs and they can't make system-wide changes. Administrators can. You only have 2 options. You can name your user anything, but the username has to be lowercase. Just follow this instruction cycle. If you're doing this for a child, assign them most of the time a standard account. I'll just do the sample. I'll call this Junior. And then hit tab. And then I'm going to hit add. So if you have Junior here, set a password for Junior. So put your password in there. I'm not going to click that. I'm just going to let you see that. If it does match, then you'll have a change. If it doesn't match, it doesn't have the change. It's got passwords don't match. Okay. You get the idea? So I'm going to delete Junior. So when you add another user, it creates another folder. Another folder here in your home directory. These are where your users are stored. So if I added Junior without canceling, it would add his folder in here. And every one of these, of course, has their standard folders. All right, so I'm going to close that box and continue. So we have preferences here, and you can also click in here. There's lots of settings in here, folks, and I'm not going to cover all of them today because you can probably go check out my other video for Linux Mint 21.1, and it will show you pretty much everything on here. But just the highlights would be backgrounds. You can also right-click and change background to get the same dialog box. And also in this area here, you can also play your backgrounds as a slideshow if you don't want to download stuff like Variety. It does a fairly good job. Just keep in mind when this is activated, this starts cycling whatever folder this is on. So I'm currently on the Linux Mint folder, so it's going to cycle through all of these depending on this increment. You could reduce that to 1 minute if you like. You notice the images are gray. I can't click on them. That's your first clue that something is running. So turn that off if you want to. Now I can individually click these. So these are the folders. All right, let me back this out. So you have themes. This is where that mouse pointer, and again, it's a custom one. But the new version of LMDE 5 now contains the same mouse pointers that the standard version for Linux Mint 21 does also, if you've updated. I also have that one installed. And that does not come with the standard installation, but you do get quite a few of these. These are installed in a different place than .icons. They're usually in user share icons folder, protected by root permissions. These are considered mouse pointers that are installed system-wide. They'll be installed for all users and future users. These are only installed for my local user. Go check my video out for that for full explanation. So icon sets, application sets, and desktop sets. Anytime you make changes to this, can I advocate you go grab that screenshot tool and basically grab the current window as a screenshot. I'm going to send mine to the desktop just for purposes of a demo. So it names the file today's date and time. And there, I'm waiting for the thumbnail to generate. It should be done. There we go. So basically I'm going to minimize this for a second so not to confuse you. But that gives me a clear idea what all this stuff is in case I'm making changes. It's always a good idea to do this. Unless you got super good memory. I do this for myself actually. And I do this all the time. All right. So with that said, I am going to drag a box around that and hit delete because I don't need that. So there's lots of settings is what I'm getting at. Accessibility issues, large text you may be interested in, seniors may be interested in, high contrast maybe. It's a little blaring, isn't it? I'm not going to scare you by turning that on. So it's like a computer voice trying to read to you. Okay, so there are some options in here is what I'm getting at. So the keyboard visual indicator for caps lock, I'm going to press it right now. That's this thing. I also have that little thing installed. So if I turn that off, I'm pressing the caps lock key now. Now all I get is a post-it note. That's coming from this thing. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. Let me turn that back on. Audio indicator, I normally don't have that on. Just some different tips for you today. Count details. You want your mugshot in here of your user. My user is T. We have applets. Applets belong down here. Desklets belong on your desk. So let me give you an example of that one right there. This one is a nice one to have for a lot of folks that want a big calendar. So I'm going to activate Calendar Desklet. You can get it from downloads. And you can also drag it to where you want it and resize this also. Configure. Make it large. Make it as transparent as you want. So an example of that, I'm going to grab a photo from my desktop thing. How about a regular photo? How about this? Or that? Or even that? It's nice and big. You can also color the icons here. So if I were to configure this with a, what is that, Sunday here, we're going to use a different color. Let's just use yellow. How about that one? You get the idea? So this is an edit mode. That's why the box is red. Now it's a see-through. If I don't want the see-through, I drag the transparency in the opposite direction. Now it's black. This may be of value to it. Right-click, add desklets. Desklet, Calendar Desklet. If I turn this off, it will go back to here. If I delete this and reinstall it, it goes back to the default settings, just as an FYI. I'll drag this over here and configure this here with full transparency, and I'll leave it up there for a while just to have some fun. So let's go back to where did I leave off? Oh yeah, I was in settings. So applets are downstairs. They're down here. You can also get applets by, I'm going to close this for a second, by right-clicking on this panel bar and hit applets here. Okay, let me go to the settings again. So you can get your system settings by clicking on this panel bar here. You can also go to your Mint menu. And if you don't have this icon, just type in, I'm going to drag it out and drop it. So I can put in SE for settings, and then you can drag it in here. Or you could right click and add it to your favorites the manual way. Or add it to your desktop or panel. Anyways, I find it convenient just to go downstairs. So those are applets. Date and time is self-explanatory. Now, normally this comes installed with a 24-hour clock turned on. My time is not accurate, so, but anyways, and I'm using the Los Angeles time zone. So this is actually clickable, and I normally have to put in my password to do this with. And, oh, put the wrong password. Oh, you know what? My caps lock key is on. Oh, turn that off. That would help. All right, so basically I changed the time zone here is what I'm doing. I'm clicking Here's Vancouver and Los Angeles. I'm in that region, let's put it that way. 24-hour clock, you'll see the time change over here. Well, I currently have the 3:20, but you know, when you switch this over, that becomes AM PM. You can also turn off the date thing. I like to look at the date thing, so that's up to you. All right, so some of the simple stuff. Let's see, what else do we have here? If you are wanting your icons on your desktop, like your home folder or trash can or whatever it might be, I'm just going to forewarn you, I normally turn mine off. I'm not really forewarning you. I'm just telling you, if you click your files, here's your trash can, here's your file system, and here's your home folder. You really don't need those icons here. It's just a waste of time and a waste of space. But if you want those, you just drag these on. These are system icons. You can't delete them. You have to turn them off here. Or right-click, customize, settings, and then turn them off here. Those are a couple of different ways to get to those shortcuts. Again, there's a lot of shortcuts in here. If you're wondering why my panel bar is semi-see-through, because I'm using one extension called Transparent Panels, you can get it from downloads. And it has semi-transparent and then fully transparent. Now they look like they're floating. Let me change the wallpaper a little bit to give you the idea. What can I pick here? How about that? That's probably bad. All right, now you can see the, I guess that's leaves over here, right through my icons. Get the idea? Now, a lot of times if you're using bright wallpaper, the white text kind of blends. Let me pick that one. See, that's kind of washed out. So I would probably go with a different setting on this. I would probably go with a shadow maybe, or semi-transparent if I'm using bright colored wallpaper. And the cool thing about using this, you can turn it off and turn it on and turn it off. So that's normally what your panel bar looks like. Okay, so I'm going to change the wallpaper back to something different, like dark maybe, so it's not so blaring. So that was transparent panels. So that was just the settings for that. So if you have different panels, you can also activate this tool for those. I normally just have one panel. By the way, if you don't like this panel on the top, on the bottom, you can also move it to the top. I don't advise usually running the panels on the side because you lose a lot of real estate. But I will give you that example. And you'll notice my date will be cut off if I do this. See, that's kind of jumbled up over here. And I lost a lot of space. Now I'm going to put it back to downstairs. So you can see there's a lot of options for you with Linux Mint. All right, hot corners is exactly what it says. You can have this thing perform some actions depending on which corner. I'm just giving you an example. So hot corners is you can do some functions on it. You can actually run commands. I don't really use that tool, but I just wanted to present that in here. Input, not going to talk about. Language is not. Notifications, self-explanatory. Online accounts, if you have some online accounts, then you can do some calendar work and stuff like that with this. Your panel bar, you can intelligently hide. There's a difference between auto hide and intelligent. Intelligently hide just means if any box is anywhere near this panel box, it auto hides. Let me get close to this thing. It goes away. And I'll bring it back up slowly. You could also have it always remain. Or you can do auto hide. Auto hide means you need to move your mouse pointer downstairs. That actually drives me nuts. You can also change the height of the panel. If you're going to do this, my suggestion is to make a screenshot of this. I believe that's where I had my icons. Also, when you do your screenshots, remember there are 3 zones here. Left, center, and right. They are slightly different. Okay, so that is panel height and zones. Left zone, center zone, and right zone. Too much information? Maybe. I'm just trying to cover all bases here. You don't have to use a lot of these settings if you don't want to. Preferred app is self-explanatory. The privacy thing is just basically for recent files. You can have it forget about old files, or you can remember recently files. That's all up to you. The check for internet connectivity is a good thing. When you log into your system, it's going to check to see if it can get out to the internet. Screensaver, you got your different time zones, different times. It's blank. Startup applications, really not going to cover that much, but you know, this is where you have some delays on certain things. You know, I write script files for some of my systems. I put the script files activated in here so they run when I log in to like copy or back up a folder to another hard drive, for instance. You probably noticed earlier that I have some extra hard drives. All right, so Windows. Do you like your buttons here or the other side? Now they're on the left. That's an important one to realize if you are fond of buttons to the left or right. Okay. So action on the title bar. You can also change this, but these are the defaults. Double click, double click, double click. Those are actions. Window tiling, really not going to talk about. Workspaces, I think most people can figure out. So you got your Bluetooth. I don't recommend messing with the color. You have a utility here that shows you your hard drives and USB sticks if you have them, and it'll tell you what kind of what kind of partitions your drives are formatted with, if you're curious. There's an internal spinning hard drive that I got formatted with two different types of format, extension 4 and BTRFS, just to give you some examples. Display, if you have the luxury of changing it, my 43-inch monitor is capable of going up to 4K, but I like to film in this video. I'll film in this mode if I'm doing long videos. Okay, but you can change the resolution in here if you have that luxury. A lot of your laptops, you're kind of fixed. Graphic tablet, not going to talk about. There are some keyboard shortcuts. So under System, shutdown is normally what I assign to my F12. What does F12 do? Let me depress it for you. Gives me that shutdown and restart and hibernate and suspend instead of me going down here and finding that button. There are 3 key bindings usually to every function in here. That's quite extensive. Mouse and touchpad. That's not where this is contained, but this mouse pointer size is contained here. You can barely pick that up. It's now what I call dinky. It's kind of middle of the road. This mouse pointer happens to be variable. Go take a look at my video on installing mouse pointers. So your network's here, not going to click it. Power management. If you wonder why your screen goes inactive, you may want to change that from 10 minutes, which is usually default, to something different. Okay. And then if you have a power button on your keyboard, a lot of times this will be do nothing. You may want to check to see if it says ask. If it does, then you depress that keyboard. It's like pushing this button here. That's kind of a cool feature. Actually, I like that feature. So your printers, mine is auto-discovered on my network because it's a network printer. Okay, see it says discovered. You can also manually add these things and just follow the directions. Sound is the same thing as clicking down here. This is exactly the same thing. And then you have simple system information. Simple system information. LMDE 5LZ. So I used NeoFetch earlier. I think I pointed this out to you. Oops, misspelled. Forgot the O. So this gives me slightly more information than this has, but the inxi command, this one here, is more detailed. And then of course you can always go to your SY system reports. I'm just using a search feature under this right here. This is practically the same information. The cool thing about this one also, it shows you where your software is coming from. The repositories. I didn't get to that part yet because it's down here. Mint and Debian is where that stuff is coming from. And of course, Flatpak software comes from FlatHub. All right, so I stopped at printer. So sound, system information. Firewall normally comes turned off. If you're going to use Warpinator, make sure that you click on that last tab so it can put in some rules for you. So if you have this turned on, so you can actually transport files into your system. Because this is normally set to deny everything, but allow outgoing. So if you're transporting file in your system, your Warpinator application can write you rules and put it in here for you. Whether this is open or closed, it doesn't matter. But I'm just telling you, if you activate your firewall and use Warpinator, you're going to need to check that. Login window, not going to cover. NVIDIA settings is because I loaded the NVIDIA driver. Quit. Users, I think I already covered. I'm going to close all these windows and say, hopefully you have subscribed to Linux for Seniors. Thank you so much for watching, and you folks have a wonderful day.